It's time for the H2G podcast, and here are your hosts.
All right, so this is Gary43. He says, I feel like Justin is the reason this country has to put directions on shampoo. Do you even know what you're talking about, bro? No, I don't, Gary fucking 43.
Justo.
I have no idea. I don't even use shampoo. I just use 1 3-in-1 body wash, you bastard.
All right, this is from Karen45. How do you feel about being ranked sexiest man on your podcast when Tony looks like a barbecued Kermit the Frog?
Jesus Christ.
Wait a second. Why? That sounds like a Tony riff. Why is Marvin?
That's a Tony riff. That's towards me?
Wow.
Does Christy think having a child on her lap makes her seem more likable? Also, get some sleep. You look tired.
Christy.
Thanks, Breezy. I'm trying.
Adam says, I see ratings must have been down. They recruited someone interesting.
Wow.
Chelsea.
Oh.
All right.
The burn on the rest of us.
Oh, I mean, thank you, Adam.
Ashley says, I watch the show a lot and I was wondering, are you all changing the name to RT2M? Richie talks too much.
Richie.
I don't know what to say, Ashley, other than I feel like I talk exactly as much as I should. So.
Yeah. Oh boy. Margaret says, is it me or when Tony talks, do you get the feeling he's constipated?
Yeah.
And Tony Ray.
Well, that face right there doesn't really help you.
Welcome to the H2G podcast.
All right. Welcome back to the H2G podcast for this lovely Wednesday. As you guys know, we tend to take it a little bit more serious on Wednesdays. It varies a little bit. So for today, we're going to be talking about work-life balance. I know this is something that I personally have struggled with, both because of the requirements of work, but also just who I am as a person. I have like a to-do list and I just want to check everything off. So I just kind of wanted to get input from other people. You guys can leave comments about either things that you struggle with or maybe even ways that you work, your normal life into your work schedule, or little secrets to making sure that you don't overwhelm yourself, whatever you want it to be. But let's go around and talk about it. I'll save myself for last. Let's start with Tony.
Well, you're talking to somebody that actually doesn't know the definition or the meaning of work-life balance. 17 years that's all I've ever done was just hustle, because that's what I thought that you were supposed to do. And, it takes, getting a family, it takes, talking to people and losing sight of, relationships, but gaining that, knowledge when you do talk to those friends, you're giving up a lot for perfection. And well, at least for me. So, you're not going to be perfect. And my biggest thing was I was putting in 70 to 80 hours a week to reach perfection. And it just wasn't happening. And so with that, I was making money, but money's not everything. And I think a lot of people forget that, yes, money does make the world go round, but what else makes the world go round is actually living your life, and living your life with your friends, and living your life with your family. And, so 2020 is actually, in some ways, I call it a blessing, because it reprioritized things for me. It let me know what really was important. And so, I missed out on time with, Richie. I missed out on time with, Carrie's family, my family. And 2020, I was able to, revisit some of those things and realize that, if you do have a job, do it the best you can. but don't sacrifice the things that mean the most to you. Okay, you can always find ways to make money. If your job's not giving you the work-life balance that you desire, change it. Unless you absolutely love what it is that you're doing, then you have to realize that you're doing what you want to do, but you're sacrificing other things. See, I think the majority of people are sacrificing things and they don't really love the job that they're doing. So you have to find out what it is that you actually want to do and do that. And then for you to reprioritize, what's important to you. For some people, it is all about money. They don't give a damn about, their family or whatever it is. And that's fine, that's them. But I think we're talking to the people that they're really looking for, man, how do I figure out this work-life balance just, for me? And, I guarantee you're going to get a lot of great tips. And I thank Chelsea for bringing this topic up from the people that know best, at least in this group, the people that know best in this group. I can't wait to hear what everybody else has to say, because I'm going to take something away and learn and, hopefully implement it. And that's the big thing. You can't be narrow-minded. You have to be open-minded. So if you're listening to this podcast and you want to take it serious, you have to take what these people are about to say and implement it, research it, read some books, whatever it is. But you might say, well, Tony, I don't have the time to do that. Do you take a shower? I know you take a shower, unless you're stinky ass bum Justin over here who doesn't take showers. You take a shower, listen to an Audible. Do you drive to work? Maybe not because of COVID. If you drive to work, listen to an Audible. You always can find time. When you're cooking, you can just play it in the background. Always find the time. Don't make excuses. I just read a post from a friend. He rewatched The Office. He said it was 99.9 hours or whatever it was. It was 99 point something hours he wasted watching The Office, and he's done it 4 times because he loves the show. I'm not knocking him if he loved the show, but what else could you have been doing with that 99.9? But maybe that's the balance that he wants as well. So it's not for me to say. I'm just saying for me, I would be utilizing that time a little bit different.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think sometimes we lose sight of the things that we're doing that we could be utilizing that time to improve ourselves or improve the things in our lives that, normally we might be complaining about work-life balance, but really there's things that we could be doing to spend that time a little bit better. So we can let Justin finish eating. We'll let Richie go next.
Sure. I've been through a lot of different phases of my life when it comes to work. I think I'll just start off with what Tony was referring to, which I think is the common one, which is overworking. I wanted to be a journalist really bad, so I was working 2 part-time jobs. I was working part-time as a journalist, and I was also freelancing from Virginia and Ohio. So I did a lot of that, and what Tony was talking about, that 70, 80 hour kind of number. And eventually, I just really thought about it, and it's like, okay, I was chasing my career job that I thought was my dream job, and I loved doing it, but the sacrifices I felt I was making in my personal life of having time, like immediately I saw it, not being able to see my friends, not being able to learn, not being able to read, not being able to do the things I wanted to do, because I was working 7 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day. It was a lot. So I ended up saying, forget this, and kind of rebooted and moved to California. That's not for this discussion, but I moved to California and I went the other direction. I took a very high paying job, very high stress. So again, you would think I'd fall into that fallacy of, oh no, I'm gonna have to work to make sure I'm doing well, so I'm successful, because if I'm gonna do something, I wanna do it at 100%. I don't wanna be the bad person at my job. But it was kind of the opposite. I was willing to work, and I do work a lot. I work from 6 in the morning to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. So it's not as bad, but it is salary and it is significant amount of time Monday through Friday. But the moment 6 o'clock rolls by, I'm out. I'm out the door. I don't care. My job doesn't pay me enough for that. I've told my CEO to his face. 6 o'clock comes by. It's 6 a.m. Richie's problem, not 6 p.m.'s. And I leave. So I'm at the point now where I don't sacrifice anything for work at this point. I will 1000% dedicate myself during work, but the moment it's time to shut it off, I shut the book. And I do whatever I want to do. You know, Tony kind of mentioned it for himself, personal growth, right? So for some people, particularly when you have like stress in your life, kind of relaxing or doing something that's comfortable, like for instance, watching The Office is how they deal with that. And for some people, they strive for growth at all times. So, you know, I'm not here to talk about that. That's, you know, personal. But I would say in terms of work, I think the most important thing between work and your personal life is, do you feel fulfilled? Right? And whatever that ratio is up to you. Do you feel fulfilled working however many hours you're doing and doing whatever you're doing in your personal life? And when I say fulfilled, it's not just happiness and fulfillment on your, you know, intellectual value, but it's also financial, right? Because that is a burden for most of us when we live. So fulfillment requires multiple things in your life. It's, are you financially stable? Are you stressed from financial things? No? Okay. So you move on to the next topic. You know, how is your mental health? Are those things going? Boom. And this isn't in order of precedence. Let me clarify. If you're having mental stress because of, you know, your job, it's time to move on as well. But you need to compartmentalize, you know, things in your life, whether it's personal relationships, personal growth, free time. Because that's neither, right? That's doing things and not having any sort of schedule regimen, and then work. And you need to figure out what the best balance is for you, right? And if your job isn't working to the other three, then maybe it's time to consider finding a job that will still make ends meet and hit the other portion. So I think it's really important for everyone to do their own self-discovery, because it's not necessarily just your job. I think a lot of the times people worry too much about the idea of, I'm working too hard at this job, and if I work at this other job, my life is just fixed. That's not how this works. It's really coming down to, you know, what do you want to do in your life? And I don't mean career. I'm talking about like, what do you want to do when you're not working? And how do you see that? How do you vision that? How much time is that? How much time is dedicated to yourself? How much time is dedicated to potentially others if you're in a family, relationship, things of that nature, or friends, etc. Relationships of all kinds. And then how much time do you need to just have as free time, availability for any of those things? And then how much time do you need for work? And that's what you have to figure out. And obviously, what I will say is it's also important to be adult and be mature and not be like 5% work and 95% the rest, because that's not realistic. But I think that's really important. I think that's what people lose sight of, is understanding their own needs. They get too focused on money or happiness and fulfillment from their career, and then everything else is their life. And they just view it as these two like sides to a whole. And it's really more like a pie, and there's a lot of slices involved, and there's a lot more things that need to move. It's a lot more moving parts. So I think like finding a balance is really understanding who you are and your needs outside of work, and then working around how much time you need for work, right? Because to me, it's in terms of work specifically, whatever that little chunk of the pie is, it's how much money you're making, your satisfaction, and your time, right? Do you feel good about it? Are you being compensated fairly? And how much time is it taking? Those are what I think are the three things for work. And then you need to figure out if those three things are gelling. And then, like I said, then look at your personal life. Because to me, if your work is bleeding into your personal life, that's not work's fault, that's your fault. And that's what I'm referring to in terms of finding your own fulfillment and finding your own needs. So whatever you're doing in any job, whether you're, the mailman, whether you're, working at McDonald's, whether you're a CEO, CFO, CEO of a company, at the end of the day, you have to determine, what matters in your life. And if your work is important, that's totally understandable, but it comes at a cost when it's bleeding into your personal life. And that's where that margin needs to change. And, Tony kind of mentioned it earlier that he made sacrifices. And I think, had younger Tony thought about it from the perspective of how is this impacting my life in terms of, his success at work, he might have made that change a little faster, realistically. So I think any of you that are listening out there, just really think about what is important to you in your personal life. And then that's how you'll balance your work. And you'll be able to understand how much time you have for it. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think I really like the do you feel fulfilled? I think that because it's different for everybody.
Sure.
So, it really comes down to some self-evaluation, I think, and figuring out what makes sense for you. I mean, there's plenty of people that I know that truly do love the job that they do, whether they're a teacher or, whatever it may be, and they feel fulfilled having that be a huge chunk of their life. That I genuinely wish I was that way, that I had something that was just like a part of who I am that I could do as a living, but I don't have that. So Justin, I'm going to hand it off to you now that you're done snacking.
Yeah, gotta keep towards my goals. There's a lot of sides to this for me. I am someone who has had to find, who has let work define them. So I've had a lot of jobs, and I'm upfront about that. And I've had that conversation. And even in interviews, I'll be upfront about that. That's something scary when you're going to an interview. They're going to ask me, why have you worked so many places? I've had a lot of jobs, and a lot of the time, this is something that Tony and I both have in common, is I work my way into management. I see the bigger picture in a company, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But I've found myself making my entire life centered around the job because I feel that there's certain levels of success that are expected from me. And what that's done in different times of my life, it's caused an extreme drinking problem. I can own up to saying that I don't have one that's consistent, but I've lived the life where I've worked until the calls stop, and then I drink myself to sleep because I know I'm going to have to get up and do it all over again. I've lived the life where I'm supplementing the stress of working all the time with food and eating poorly and just not caring about my personal health. I've put so much time in, and a lot of the times that's with a salary position. Again, I'm going to get into management in a second, but I feel like some of this falls onto management. They take advantage of the fact that you don't necessarily have a certain amount of hours to clock, right? And you don't have a time that you're going to leave. They expect you to earn your salary or whatever. But it's important that you, like Richie and Tony and Chelsea have all pretty much said at this point, understand where that boundary is for yourself. Because even if you are in my previous positions where you're working jobs that aren't necessarily your passion, right? You didn't go to school for this. This isn't what you wanted to do with your life. This is just what makes the money to pay the bills. You can't let your job dictate everything else about your life. I've done it, and it's hard to think back and talk about it, but I've put off numerous opportunities for myself, whether it be with theater, whether it be an opportunity at a relationship or a friendship with somebody, whether it be time with family, whether it be watching The Office, which we know wouldn't happen because we've watched other episodes of H2G podcast. No, I don't care for the show. But it's sickening to think about the fact that I did that to myself and how much damage was done there. You don't realize it until it's past all that. But what you're doing is you are training your own mind and your own mentality to slave yourself to these jobs. And it's important that you take pride in your work, and it is important that you do a good job at work, but you absolutely have to separate between the two. And I'm going to sound redundant if I stay on that side of things. The other thing I'd like to talk about is from a management perspective. I've been in management, both in salary positions and in hourly positions. And I think it's very important to assess your team at all times and make sure that you're not putting too much weight on these individuals. I mean, that's a huge part of it. I've had managers that will make me feel like they're my best friend. I've had managers that make me feel like they're family to me, and that they create this trust and this bond so that I will feel like it's going to be a really big deal if I let them down. And then they use that tactic as a way to keep me over. And, I really appreciate it if you could stay a few extra hours tonight and finish this up. Or, hey, I know you had plans this weekend, but we're so far behind, and I know I can trust you. And they use those tactics to pull you back in and to force you to be more work-minded, and it blends that boundary line and makes it disappear eventually. And then you wind up in a situation where if you're a single guy like myself, you're working 70, 80, 90 hours a week. And that's not just single guys. Single guys have less to go home to. So that, we're the target sometimes in those kind of situations, because they're like, yeah, I mean, he'll work his whole life away if we let him, or if he lets us. But then families get torn apart over stuff like that. I mean, I know several marriages that have ended because of no work-life balance. There was no boundary line. And sometimes, in my opinion, that falls on the management team and the structure and the ownership. You're not going to get 100% productivity from the people that work from you if you drive them into the ground. You will for a little while. You'll get some great numbers. You'll get some excellent months, but you will see that decline and you'll lose that workforce. And sure, you can replace it. But you're never going to reach the success that you'd like to succeed to. You're never going to get to where you want to be and stay there, or you'll never get to where you could go, I guess is the best way to say that, if you continue to push your employees and your staff into the ground and drive them like they're not human beings. You have to recognize when someone's overworked. I've had wonderful managers on the flip side of the coin who have said, you know what, why don't you take the day? Because they could see in my face and in my body language and in the lack of production, more than likely, they would never tell me that because I'm very anal about that stuff, but they could see that the job is wearing me down and I'm not effective when I'm at that point. And it's a shame that some management teams and some ownership can't see that, or if they do see it, they just don't do anything about it. They believe that, we'll work this person until they're gone. And so that's why it goes back to you as the individual. You have to recognize when that's going on and that's happening to you, because if that's how they feel about you, then like Richie said, it's probably not the long-term thing for you. And the best way to find out is to set the boundary line, to say, no, you told me that my job ends at 6 p.m. So 6 p.m. I'm going home, 5 p.m., 4 p.m., whatever it is. And if they're going to force you past that, then it's not the right fit, and you deserve something better, something that's going to keep you a more healthy state of mind and allow you to be productive and take pride and have fun in your work.
You just transitioned it perfectly, because I was going to talk about setting boundaries. So going into this, I guess I want to start with what sparked the idea of this topic. So prior to the ice and snowstorm and me going to South Carolina, things at my job got crazy, which is a fortunate thing, because after everything with COVID in 2020, bring on the work, we don't ever want to get to the point that we did. Fortunately, the company still did pretty well, but, we got quite an influx of work. And it's one of those situations, it's a combination of the nature of the job, but also my inability to set boundaries that kind of pushed me to my breaking point. I was inching closer and closer to that breakdown moment of I can't do this anymore. And honestly, I had planned that vacation ahead of time. It was just, that whole everything happens for a reason type of thing. I had planned it for that week on a whim. There wasn't really any reason behind it, and it just happened to fall exactly when I needed it. So props to January 2021 Chelsea for doing that for myself. But I think going on that trip and getting time away and really getting to focus on myself and go out and go hiking and spend time with friends that, mean a lot to me, it made me realize that I hadn't been setting those boundaries, that I'd been kind of drowning myself in expectations that I probably pushed on myself more than my company did. And I think it's really timed well with me starting all this like nutrition and fitness too, because I've realized like how important it is to eat the right food, get plenty of sleep, reduce the amount of stress that you're under, because all of those things have a direct impact on your efficiency and your ability to do good quality work when you're actually working. So for me, it's forced me to implement some of these boundaries. So now like my gym days are Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I leave work at 6 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. If I'm sitting in the CEO's office, I'm like, hey, I have a hard stop at 6. I have to leave at 6. And I let them know. And I don't do it in a rude way. I'm not saying, no, I'm not going to do this work, but I have other obligations in my health and, you know, my life outside of work is also a priority to me. And so I'm going to set that hard stop. And if it's going to impact me meeting a deadline, then I'm going to have that respectful and professional conversation with whoever I need to have it with, and kind of force maybe some awkward conversations that I wouldn't normally want to have with somebody, but basically be like, something's got to give here. So I've been working on implementing those boundaries, but I think a lot of it I see, you know, on one flip side with like Tony's situation of 2020 being a bit of a blessing because it kind of realigns what your priorities are. But I feel like for me, it's done the opposite, because before this, I was always the person that was leaving at exactly 5:30 or 6. I left my work at work and I was done with it. But then I worked from home for a while. Now I'm back in the office and I feel like that boundary like got really muddied. And so for me, it's like I'd be like, oh, well, I have my laptop. I'll just pull it out and do this really quick. Or, you know, well, I'm working from home, so I might as well just keep working while I'm here type of thing. And for me, it just kept snowballing and it kept getting worse. So now I've reached the point that, you know, with me trying to improve and do this whole fitness and nutrition journey, I absolutely have to be willing to make those boundaries. And in this particular case, that happens to be work and making sure I have that balance, but it's you should make boundaries in other areas of your life too. I just think it's really important that with the isolation that's already happening with COVID and, you know, most people probably don't have as much ability to travel. If you do, you have to do it very safely, obviously. But setting those boundaries and making sure you still make time for yourself, making sure if it's going to the gym or cooking or reading a book or writing or even watching The Office in excess, whatever it is that is your thing that keeps you sane, make sure that you set that boundary and you make the time for it. And if that means planning it out on a calendar, like you actually set a schedule in your planner, so be it. Like do whatever you have to do to make sure that you hit those boundaries and you're not letting things slip, because eventually you're going to be like me, where you're reaching that breaking point and you may not have a very well-timed trip that you didn't mean to plan at that time. But yeah, let's hear about it. You know, in the comments, did anybody else have any like things that got brought up that they wanted to talk about? Because otherwise I'll just let people kind of comment below with any issues or things that they've gone through. Yes. Leave comments. We like comments.
Leave comments. We're all about it, guys.
Sometimes it sparks new ideas for other podcast topics. But yeah, let's hear all about it. Let's hear about, you know, how you balance out your life or struggles that you've gone through. I'm sure it's happening to everybody, especially after 2020. But that is the H2G podcast. Stay tuned at 8 p.m. for The Wire, and we will see you back tomorrow.